Hi, and welcome back to Design with Renn. I'm so excited to have Kem Laurin-Lubin joining me again for this conversation. Today, we're diving into something that sits at the intersection of technology, culture, and care. We're focused on AI in beauty today. And it's wild to think how far we've gone from duck face selfies to algorithms that now literally decide what's attractive. And the real question is, Kem, what does that mean for designers, researchers like us, for culture, and for individuality? Together, today, we're going to unpack how AI is reshaping beauty from digital conformity and culture eraser to what it means to design filters with empathy and responsibility. For those in our audience today listening in, we're curious if you've ever edited a photo to match what you think performs better online. And if so, tell us in the comments. Start your line with, I edited because, or I didn't because, and add one sentence about how it made you feel. We'd love to learn from you and continue the conversations there. So let's set the stage, starting where this all began. I guess a couple of weeks ago with a conversation Kem and I were having offline. And, how did we get from something as harmless as, you reminded me of the term duck face to full-on AI filters shaping how we present ourselves and how we even perceive beauty itself.
Renn, just to demonstrate for Dion, initiated duck face. So we know what we're talking about. So yes.
That was a good duck face. Wow.
Yes. Oh, wow. Where do we start with that? The whole topic of AI and beauty is one that I don't even know where to begin. It's a very, very, very big mushroom to even bite into, and it's getting bigger. But let me just start with an analog story. I was just on YouTube and saw somebody posting, and I don't know if we can actually share it and find it and then maybe put it up somewhere, but somebody was sharing what Koreans look like before the whole K-pop revolution.
Interesting.
And it was astounding to me. And this was just an analog story of pre-K-pop and plastic surgery and all of that. And if you know a lot of these K-pop performers, that is not their original face, right? And I was just stunned. They had variations in faces. I could tell one from the other. And I thought, how cool. But today, you have these K-pop type filters that can give you that K-pop look. And for a lot of young, impressionable people growing up, that is the beauty standard that they aspire to. So back to duck face. Duck face, where do we start with duck face? I blame the French.
Tell me more.
Why do I blame the French? If you look at the court of the Louis, I don't even know which Louis to start with, but one of the Louis, you look in the audience and the way makeup was applied, it was always within the center, right? If you recall, right?
Yeah.
And you also see that in Victorian England. Lipstick was not something that was applied liberally like we apply right now, like I have it on. It was very much what simulated, I guess, a cute duck. So, fast forward, we have the onset of social media. We see the rise of duck face with the Kardashian Jenner clan and how everything had to be constructed for the gaze of the audience via, of course, their mobile phones. And that, to some extent, became the aspirational beauty standard, right? And a lot of it was, and you can find this, I wrote about this somewhere else. You could hear the Kardashians saying, oh, this is how you do it. Actually, lessons on how to do duck face by the Kardashians and others. And so when they were sort of centered to culture, just, I want to say even a decade ago, the aspiration was duck face and the faces that they presented for the gaze, for the male gaze. And so how does that relate to algorithms? Basically, the algorithms, the AI, was telling us that was what it prioritized as beauty standards, right? And then, you, of course, a lot of these women, they wear a lot of makeup. And so to achieve that look, the people who might not be that wealthy may just use the applique of a filter to actually achieve that Kardashian duck face look. We also have other American actresses, like one of my favorites. I think we share a similar birthday, Megan Fox. Nobody say a bad word about her. She's a Taurus. But yeah, so I think, with the onset of people, that sort of centering for the male gaze in our culture, we see the algorithms actually elevating that as the standard of beauty. And there's a lot I can unpack in terms of histories of duck face. But
Hmm.
I think the topic is AI and the whole idea of beauty standards. You would have recent news items where AI is the judge of beauty contests.
So yeah, so what does it mean? So from your point of view, what does it mean when algorithms decide what's attractive?
What does that mean? That's a big question to unpack. But what it means is that we have, as human beings, allowed AI to take a lot of our essence and
Mm,
sense of meaning, sense of representation as a collective, and said, you know what, you tell us what you think is beautiful, right?
mm,
As opposed to having our natural, heaven given variety of beauty standards, culturally beauty standards, and all of that, right? Culturally diverse beauty standards. And so I think that is one
mm.
of the big humps that now we have a uniformity of what beauty is, whether it is the trend of the BBL, whether it is stuck face, whether it is, what is it? Is it real face? What is it called when the face is all wet? There are all these filters, all of these trends that are actually mediated by artificial intelligence and the rankings in search engines for what is considered aesthetically beautiful.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You're making me think about this in a different way, and I'm not aware of that filter. But
Yes.
what I'm thinking about is that it's not. It feels like it isn't just about filters. It's about algorithmic bias
Mm. Yes.
and what happens when the sort of design meets or has influence at this larger scale. And it reminds me of the episode that we have where we were talking about designing with ethics in the age
Yes. Yes.
of AI, which people listening in can also find on the channel. And I'm reminding myself now to add that into the comments as a prompt as well. So with actually adding that prompt, I really would love feedback from those in the audience. If you feel AI is shaping your sense of beauty, or are people, you, still in control? Comments below, starting with AI shapes me because, or people decide because, and include one quick example that you have where
Mm.
you see AI shaping your sense of beauty would be really appreciated for Kem and I to continue on this conversation. So the rise of the Instagram face was something that we had chatted about
Yes.
last briefly as well. And I believe this is where it gets really interesting, but also a little unsettling. So filters really, they used to exaggerate, but I think as you've, or my interpretation of what you were suggesting leading up to uh, my question was that, they used to exaggerate, but now they're standardizing. Looks like
Yes.
every K-pop,
Yes.
you know,
Absolutely.
the bands, individuals, singers, musicians, starting to, look the same.
Yeah.
So from copying old beauty ideals to producing new ones, we have this homogenous look, this
Mhm.
Instagram face, and why? What are your thoughts on that, and why do
Yeah.
people look to post? I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but why do you think people post something that matches that aesthetic in order to get themselves more visibility?
Yeah. It's a big question. Can I answer it in two parts?
Yes, please.
So,
Yeah.
the whole onset and unraveling of technology has always been to, and this is something I teach as well, to reify human things and then to commoditize it and then to monetize it, right?
Mm,
So I'll give you one example and then I'll answer that question. But the whole idea of romance, right? That was just something that existed in humanity. People loved each other and they did certain things, right?
mm-hmm,
Under the rubric of what was considered romantic pre-technology. But now you have, sites that have actually used that to say, well, people want to have that feeling, that wonderful euphoric feeling. So we'll have OK Cupid, we'll have OnlyFans, and they've created all of these things that the trajectory of everything that has existed in our analog spaces become packaged. A value is added to it. It becomes commoditized, right? Even in Japan right now, you could rent a grandma, you could rent an uncle because, the population is very large.
mm-hmm,
So people are always looking to be part of community. They're also looking for identification.
mm-hmm,
And in the context of AI and search engines, they are also looking to be valued,
mm-hmm,
right? And so if I post a picture of myself, perhaps with my hair not done and all of that, and take a picture. It might appeal to a few people who might like, oh, she's real, right? But for the most part, if I take a picture where I have done my hair, put on some lipstick, done my eyes, I may not look like Kim Kardashian, but we have been socialized in this culture, in this digital space, to know that our proximity to that is what
Mm-hmm.
people are looking for,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's the
So, yeah,
proximity of the to like the viewer, but the algorithm itself is rewarding the sameness
exactly.
quietly, or maybe not so quietly, punishing the difference where
Yes.
we won't be seen, or we're not acknowledged by the algorithm, but then not acknowledged by our peers or those that we're looking to engage with.
Use a very interesting word that I have been using all semester with my student.
Mm-hmm.
Those of us who do not conform, we are punished, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do not get ranked in the algorithms because of this, that, and the other. And this is the standard of beauty. And if there is some degree of overlap and you meet the standard, it's the match. You get ranked. For those who do not, and this also has a cultural, ethnic, racial dimension to it as well too. You do not conform to that. And we are seeing beauty standards change, and an inclusion of different cultural beauty standards. But we do that to be valued. The value system in the algorithms is your proximity to this thing will raise your viewing in the search engines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of some of the comment you had where in another episode, the ethical responsibilities of designers in
Yes,
the AI, where we talked about the bias and responsibility in design, and
mm,
so another one that the audience can find in this channel as well.
yes.
So for again, I'm prompting the audience a few times in this conversation because this is the first time we've talked about AI and beauty. So we're looking for comments to understand people's point of view and also
Yeah.
start more of a conversation around the podcast we have. Curious if anyone has an example of when the last time they saw a post that stood out for its originality, and
Mhm.
describe that in one sentence, starting your comment with standout post. Tell us
Yeah.
what made it different and why it resonated with you. And I'd be very curious to take a look at that post as well to see how much the algorithm loved or did not love that. Really beneath of what something that I'm really reflecting on is your commenting and back and providing examples that I haven't thought of. Beneath all this kind of like sameness, there's a quieter, maybe I call even like a quieter kind of harm. There's the health and wellness, the mental health toll,
Mhm.
especially
Mhm.
for young women and teens,
Mhm.
compared to these impossible standards, and then there's the cultural, which
Yes,
you've
absolutely.
cultural erasure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the examples you gave were, specific to K-pop, but I'm thinking relative to that, I'm curious to your thoughts on how this may contrast or be something that's impacting that is the like Western beauty ideals that flatten perhaps global diversity as well.
I mean, the look and feel that we aspire to in society as a beauty standard exists
Mhm.
in the pharmacies, right? We all have the same hair color. And we have more variety in natural existence, right? Like I
Mhm.
color my hair. Like I want to conform. I want to look young, right? I want to conform to that to some extent, and it's built into me, right?
Mhm.
So I don't even know if I'm answering the question, but I was just
Yeah.
thinking about a book that you may have read, too, just growing up in Canada, The Picture of Dorian Gray. You
Okay.
know, the story of Dorian Gray, who is the author? It escapes me this moment, but we
Hmm.
all did in first year university. But
Hmm.
it is a young man, beautiful man around town in, I think, I want to say post-Victorian England. And he comes across this Mephistophelian a character who
Mhm.
makes a deal to paint him. So he paints Dorian, and over the years, the picture is so beautiful that Dorian finds himself always staring at this picture. Dorian makes a deal with the devil that if he can only look that young forever and allow the picture to get older while he remains young in the real world. But as
Mhm.
Dorian ages, we are also being taken back in the book to the picture of this thing aging. And I think we're living through that moment right now that when I encounter some people in real life, I'm just like, oh my God, that's you. Because they have been programmed to think that they need to put their best self out there on the internet with the filters and the duck face and all of that. And then you meet them, and there's a big divide between who you meet in reality and who exists. So I think we're being goaded to be avatars in this space, right? Where we exist differently in our analog worlds than we do in places like the metaverse. So yes, I think there's a lot of that. I think the conversation is so big, and I want to pull in the conversation for designers and like, what is our role? What's our role, right? When we
Yes.
design for subsystems.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the type of like that, the experience you're talking about where when you meet someone in person versus seeing them online, perhaps like having conversations on them line or them online, but I think even, perhaps more so it's like that, the way that they're like if you're following someone and you see them on, like the way that they're representing themselves is like this is and then the references you're talking about from eras ago, that
Yeah,
effects of, like how beauty is presented and portrayed and then
yeah,
seen, and then kind of self-interpreted, really, that I love how you tied, though it's really interesting. It's like that, duck face kind of like it ripples across generations. So it's like
yeah,
this idea of being like a femininity is kind of like becomes this formula of how I present or portray myself. It's not, I don't know if I can't say it's not like a lived experience. It kind of becomes my experience because I'm projecting or I'm portraying that what I see as an ideal, even if I may not be aware of it.
yeah, yeah,
And this is bringing that back to designers, reminded of our talks on empathy and
yeah,
specifically age of AI, because we're talking about how algorithmic bias and how algorithm is rewarding how we portray ourselves by elevating our representation.
yeah,
When we think about how do we design, it's like we're designing, empathy isn't just about our users. It's about how understanding how the design decisions that we're making
yeah,
will affect people's like their self-worth and their identity.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like we talked about this. I don't know if you recall, 3 weeks ago, we were talking about how, as designers, we've always existed on the surface at the UI level, the
Mm-hmm.
pixel, the colors, and all of that. Oh, we're
Yeah.
talking about my book, yes. And so
Mm-hmm.
the role of designers right now in the age of AI is to be data designers, to understand what stories the data is telling us that manifest as that aesthetically pleasing layer that
Mm-hmm.
human beings interact with. And in having so, let me just give one example. When we think about skin cancer and how AI has been used to detect skin cancer on people's skin,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the trained data is done on very white skin. So when the AI model then encounters, say, a yellow skin or very dark skin or whatever, the efficacy of that assessment cannot be correct because it is never learned on the color skins. So as a designer who intervenes in that sort of data design system, our new role is to recognize these sorts of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yes.
falls under the rubric of doing no harm. But what we lack is that literacy and understanding of data systems and what they do. And the way I try to simplify this is that it's a box of numbers and letters and words,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we need to be able to understand things like syntax and semantics of this data system to know what recipe it's cooking up to serve at a aesthetic level.
How would that recipe kind of relate to filters as an example? Is that kind of like how you're
Absolutely.
is that the one way of framing it? Because I'm wondering if the filters be quietly erasing sort of cultural diversity.
Yes, absolutely. There is, I think the big trend about 3 years ago was, oh, he's ambiguous, right? This
Mm-hmm.
person is, he could be anything, right? So, and then you meet the real people. You're like, no, you're not ambiguous. You are clearly of this particular race or that particular race. And
Mm-hmm.
so, one creepy story that I was watching, in preparation for my class 3 weeks ago was the trend in China where, these girls are having crazy surgeries, right, to make themselves look like filters. They look like anime characters. It's like
Well.
nobody looks like that in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But it is so embedded in their culture, in Japan as well too, that anime look and feel, men look like anime characters,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's something, going on where for them that is the optimal thing. So how does that pertain to like filters? So there is a filter where you could, and I was watching this video for this class where this Asian woman is sitting in front of the camera. She turns on the filter and she looks like an anime character. And
Wow.
I was just like, that is crazy. Nobody looks like that. For me,
Mm-hmm.
that is the kind of oversight that is required from design ethical practitioners to say, you know what, we're going too far. We've gone too far. But then somebody might say, you know what, you're pushing back on capitalism and people's business creativity, but it's
Mm-hmm.
causing more harm than good, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that remains the
Yeah.
question.
Mm-hmm.
I can go
Yeah.
on.
It's super interesting. It's because like the example you're giving, if I understand it correctly, is that it's when like in a meeting or a call or on a like an online, that when people are connected together, that the way the person's representing themselves, if in a anime character, it's that it's a you're portraying, but then how do you interpret that within in the
Yes,
conversation? It's like
yes.
this as a yes, it's the real person, but it's personification. It's so interesting. I'm
Yes.
curious with the and being of course podcast online, you could have multiple countries, individuals joining in. Whose version of beauty is do you feel is missing from your feed? If you are in the audience, tell us in
Love
the
that.
comments, beginning with the your community or how you identify yourself, like my culture or my missing voices, adding one line about how you're seeing what you're seeing, and a bit more of that type of information for us could really help us understand your perspective, and also perhaps change perspective of others as well. Okay, yeah. So when femininity becomes a formula
Oh
was
my gosh.
this topic.
Oh,
Obviously, we go a layer deeper.
let's layer deeper.
Yeah. So you are my AI expert, and what happens when femininity itself becomes a kind of algorithm when it's not defined by culture, community, or individuality, but by, let's say, like a machine learning module or
Yeah,
model,
wow.
right?
That's a good one. That's a really good one. So the mouth, the skin,
Mm-hmm.
hair have always been sites on human beings, sites of performativity, right?
Okay.
Women carry their femininity with their mouth, and
Mm-hmm.
many times the way they walk. Part of the AI strand that explores the space of biometric data and how people are, right? There's so many strings to the conversation, but all of this now could be mathematized and
Mm-hmm.
computerized, right?
Yes.
And we've all seen the movies like Eve, and what was the movie? Eve was the big one, right? Where AI came to life as
Oh
a
yeah, I forgot
woman,
about that one. Yeah.
right? And she exudes the beauty standards, the ideals of a woman performing
Mm-hmm.
femininity, right?
Yep.
And so that I think is a movie that perhaps illustrates this notion of femininity and performativity, and animation via Eve, of course, coming to life as this big AI machine and what that looks like. We're just discussing this, so there's no answer. We're just talking about this. But I think
Mm-hmm.
femininity, and this is also harkening back to like theorists who talked about femininity and gender trouble, like Judith Butler and all these folks. But
Mm-hmm.
femininity has been harnessed and is being harnessed by AI and technology and being fed back to us to say this is what the thing looks like, right?
Yes, yes. So, what do you feel happens when an algorithm starts to define what women should look like? Like that, like to give it kind of like the Eve, the movie example, which
Yeah.
kind of exuding the, what is beauty and what is femininity, or a desirable woman. And, what do you think happens?
I have a rude response, and that would have
That's
been like,
okay.
it's none of their business. You're an AI, we're humans. But
Mm. Mm-hmm.
that's a very like short answer.
Mm-hmm.
but it's more complex than that. You and I have talked about this whole idea of Luddite summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are onto the game. Uh, the
Mm-hmm.
idea that AI is remaking us into its own image,
Mm-hmm.
telling us the way I simplify it as well too is that the AI data is us. That's us,
Yeah,
right?
we're responsible.
We're
Sure. Yeah.
responsible for that. We feed into it. We reinforce it.
Mm-hmm.
It is us, and it's telling us this is you
Mm-hmm.
as a
Yeah,
collective.
100%. Yeah. 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 So you'd talked about how do we bring this conversation back specifically to designers, researchers, technologists, those that may be listening in, and ourselves. We're not just observers. We're participants, but we are those that are deciding how tools are built and whether they make people feel seen, acknowledged, or are we creating tools that are you know, I always like to go with positive, creating tools to empower and, create value based on everyday experiences. That's
Yeah,
really critical.
yeah,
And but when we think about that, is that, that certainly implies that you're acknowledging people, but you make them feel seen, especially if it's something where they're portraying themselves in their own, how do we decide how beautiful they are or not? So if they're consistently going to a filter or representation that's a persona, that really they will be feeling seen, but seen as that representation of themselves. Um,
yeah,
so I really like this way that you're framing this because it's really for those on the call or the call listening in, that especially if you are within the space where you're rethinking filters and um, I would assume that it would be those that are designing like augmented reality tools, apps, along with filters that, how can we rethink those with care? And I know, you have these, great guidelines, heuristics, but your thoughts on that. I mean, I know, like, I can't remember the exact, you fill in the blanks for this, but you have a specific heuristic that matches this, but, like starting with transparency.
yeah. There's consent. There is. Well, I think it's the transparency itself. If we unpack that, it has to do with things like explainability, right? So right now on YouTube, for example, you have to say whether or not this was AI generated, right?
Yeah.
I know old people looking at YouTube thinking, Carney and what's his name, Justin Trudeau invested in crypto coin because
Hmm.
they've been able to co-opt their images and have them saying things that they didn't say. So
Interesting.
again, yes, and it was a big scam. My best friend's mom was scammed for $750 because she's like, this is good enough for Trudeau. This is good
Mm-hmm.
enough for me. And
Hmm.
so, again, we need to have big tech companies who want this, and a lot of them don't want this. It is
Hmm.
oversight, it is control, um, uh, it's control for them, right? It's
Hmm.
policing for them. So they
Hmm.
want to run wild in the West, in the tech West. So I think we talked about this many times that
Hmm.
every designer who cares about these critical conversations in tech need to dub themselves activist designers
Hmm.
because they are not letting us in. And you will notice some of the trends, especially in Silicon Valley, they hire very young, callow developers because they're not going to question the ethics of what they're doing. As long
Hmm.
as they can, buy a nice condo, get a car, travel to visit their family, whatever, they
Hmm.
will not question the ethics. When we were in design, we carried around logbooks. I keep on saying this
Hmm.
because we were like, oh my gosh, we could get audited,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, so it's one thinking back to the logbooks, ethics, consent and transparency. So that implies that a system will be created
Yeah,
where someone can even understand what they're consenting to. And the typical long scrolling list of things that one reads and simply
yeah,
checks at that moment in time to, get access to a given app or service or whatever the case might be. But knowing that people will do that, we all have, but not knowing how, in the case of the, face alter or filters and so on, that, like that transparency, or it's more of, anyways, I'm talking a bit in circles about this one, but that I will choose, should I be that person that wants to represent myself in a specific way, that's my choice. I'm giving consent for the audience. So like for like the audience, you gave that example of, the woman that, or, other, they're choosing to represent themselves,
Mhm.
the anime character.
Yes.
Well, that's their choice, their right to do so. But then, while at the same time, for the person looking, it's like, should there be an option to know that that face has been altered? Because it's
Mhm.
like that kind of the person that's portraying themselves that way. That's their choice. But at the same time, if we're looking to be empathetic and create empathy for the collective, not just the individual, is important. And I'm thinking also the example you gave of, you know, what may have been important before or was important before for from a design point of view, or perhaps more widely shared versus what we
Yes.
might feel responsible for now. Is that again, I always go with the everyone wants to do a good job. And so a young designer wants to, make something great that is engaging, empowering, create a filter that feels playful.
By the same token, if you remember the judge who became a cat, Your Honor, I'm not a cat.
Hmm.
That's funny as hell. And so, in that regard, it created a laugh for society. But in
Hmm.
that example, what is the harm to this woman who sees herself as this anime character and doesn't look like an anime character? In fact, anything but like an anime character, right? So, what's our role?
Yeah, no, that's a great example. And as you're talking through that, I was kind of imagining visualizing that as a story where it's the person kind of like transitioning to the cat and then back again to the person. So it's like thinking of that, if so if we start with, of course, the person, however they're portraying themselves, would need to feel comfortable with this.
Yeah.
But it's like starting with transparency. It's like I identify as an anime character, and from that transparency point of view, as a
Mhm.
as a person that is open to share that with those that they're connecting with online, because it's a digital experience, that it could, in theory, I feel like I'm brainstorming ideas, but what if you could, in that instance, like you're creating really you've whoever the designer of that is, or the designers are, that they've created filters that are very playful and creative, because that's a creative way of representing themselves. But if it was transparent, where perhaps it kind of moved from anime character to real life, or less corrective or less personified, that it could be that I represent, or I identify myself as a anime character, but I'm this in this playful creative way rather than correcting. And then
Yes.
that would have a very different feeling for the person that's seeing the person that's seeing the
Yeah.
anime character. But also, my assumption, though, of course, I could be proven wrong, that person that's portraying themselves is like, oh, I can kind of play this and I can get a response that's more playful from the person. And it's fun because I'm kind of shifting back and forth versus just presenting myself as the static image that others
Yeah.
may, that they know it's not what I am, but they can't quite figure it out. And then more so, it's like when I go out into a physical space or I meet them for the first time, which you described, it's like, who is that? So it's that, and then it's also played into that is the default to like a bias by the algorithm as to what beauty might be. So
What if we
it
open
does
Pandora's box?
actually bring me to, we talked about some, it's interesting because now we've been doing a few podcasts, and it reminds me of some of the mindsets that we talked about, the four
Yes.
mindsets too in particular that I'm reflecting on, which is like that idea of optimism that that now that we know how the results, the outcomes of the designs, in this case, the filters that we create, that we can, have humility. And it's like, oh, okay, I wasn't quite expecting that design
Mhm.
to be creative and fun, but I see now that this is used in a way that is certainly can make those in the audience feel uncomfortable, while at
Mhm.
the same time it's just really the impact on the person that's representing themselves that way, yes, could be empowering, while at the same time
Mhm.
can be can be very, very dismissive.
Mhm. You know what I found that they've done this? Sorry.
No, it's good. It's great
Mm.
conversation.
I was going to say one of the spaces I feel that this closeness of representation is fun, and we all know what's going on. The person looking knows this isn't the real person. We all know it in gaming systems. So my boys game, and sometimes when they enter the room into a game where whatever, they have to grab the avatar,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm. Yeah.
in that context, I know this is a guy in a sombrero hat who is sitting at a casino table.
Mhm.
This is a woman with big purple hair, but I know that's not what the person looks like. And so I could suspend
Mhm.
my disbelief because there is a sense that, yep, we all have a context that this is a game
Mhm.
and this is the case. But in the wider space, especially when you have the whole catfishing situations, we don't know, right? You could put
Mhm.
on a filter and look like Brad Pitt.
Mhm. Yeah, because
And
you're representing yourself that way
yes,
as a character in the game. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So like where do we draw the line, you know? Yeah, I could suspend
Yeah.
my disbelief here, but here I don't know, like the dissonance. It's
Yeah. Yeah. No, super interesting. And I've got another audience prompt based on just like leading off of your or following your comment. I'm really curious if people could redesign or remove a beauty filter or one that is enhancing. I'm going to call it enhancing. I don't know how else to say it. Altering,
yeah.
your appearance. Like if you could redesign or remove one beauty filter, what would you do? And so in comments, if you could add change filter, add what you feel is a practical suggestion, and that would really help us understand where people's thoughts are as to where the responsibilities that we have as designers or researchers should begin.
You just made me think of something. We got to talk about this. So
Hmm.
I was on one of these apps and I took a picture that was for the Dorian Gray piece that I wrote about, this I forgot what the fun house, social media fun house.
Hmm.
I remember I took a picture of myself and I could modify my nose, my mouth, my lips.
Hmm.
So subtle, it was frightening.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I could modify my skin tone, make it more even. And I think these filters need to come with a warning. All of these filters need to start coming with a warning.
Hmm.
Because there's this whole body dysmorphia thing where young people they may take a picture and they're like, I don't like my nose, right? And
Hmm.
before you know it, they have no nose because they've just shrank it way too much. And
Hmm.
there is something that is happening between the mind and that gaze and perception. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, right? It's reinforcing I'm so ugly because none of the filters have big noses. None of the filters have the undesirable aspects of human concepts of beauty, right? It's
Yes.
only a specific ideal. Why do I need to like straighten my hair? Even Jennifer Lopez was told she wasn't quite symmetrical. Like, what the hell? Right? So these filters need to start coming with a warning for young people to know that these are the dangers of using this thing. Do you
Hmm.
agree?
Yep. No, it's like that. That's a really great reflection and insight into how systems like this could be used because then it's prompting people right at the top of the choices that you make are
Mm,
will have impact on
yeah.
actually your own health and wellness, but also also on how people will perceive and identify you. I mean, I'm not it's just like not, and that's one point of view myself, which also is, of course, biased because my perception of what beauty is, or how I might represent myself, and then comments that I'll receive as well, right? Wearing and not wearing makeup, as an example, on a podcast.
Yeah,
So
but yeah.
that's been super interesting for me too. So it's super interesting. Well, super interesting. Interesting is not really the right word. So let's end by looking forward. What would be a healthier human, or what does a healthier human-centered beauty future look like?
Whoa. We should write a book. That's a big question, right? Right? Whoa, that is really a cool question. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm,
Yes, we should be
it's
able
the,
to
are the
exist.
chapters, maybe it's tech that amplifies dignity, creativity,
Different
vanity or individuality
individuality.
rather than, sorry, I cut you off. I was just thinking
No,
rather
no, no,
than
no, we're saying the same thing.
pressing us
So,
into a digital mold.
yes, yes, we're saying the same thing.
Hmm.
We have to go outside, even new in spaces, stop living online.
Hmm.
There are just so many wonderful things happening offline. You get to stare into people's myriad shades of eye color, right?
Hmm.
You get to touch things, texture, the viscerality of it all, and the future of beauty standards under the I was gonna say the dictatorship of AI. Yeah, I still want to say that. How it dictates beauty standards. We need to somehow detach from that as an ideal,
Hmm.
experience things in the real world and what it means to truly be human in a sensory space.
That's so important. I mean, you're really looping us back to, ultimately it's about designing with people, engaging, making a human
Um,
connection and, designing with, not just for them.
Yeah,
That idea of inclusivity, co-creation, making human connection, but, on a day-to-day basis within our own everyday experiences. Much of mine is online with
yeah.
people and, I'm consistently reminded of that importance of real connection. I mean, we have a real connection here, but
We
physical
do. Yeah,
in within that physical space outside of that computer.
yeah.
So the what's one I don't know, there's not one. I was gonna say this question I have one small one small design choice that could reshape the future of beauty tech. Perhaps it's maybe a
Mhm.
better way of framing that would be what's one thing you could change that should change the future of how technology is used to represent beauty.
Yeah, I would say abstain, but that's not good enough because that's maybe something that would work for more older generations because the pull is very heavy. But I think like cigarettes, like drugs, like alcohol, these things need to come with a warning.
That's such an interesting concept, and yeah, I'm just getting shivers thinking about it because it's that when like that cigarette packages where you have that large instruction and the harm to be done with that visualization of what the potential is, and it's prominently there while people it's become normalized. Like you don't notice it's just part of the way that it's represented. It's like people see it, but they don't kind of internalize that as something that might happen. It's like, oh, it's just a visual icon, symbol, graphic. It's not a real kind of like, you know, not internalizing that that could be the result. So through a digital experience, how then do you represent that or share that, or how can you prompt people in a way that really brings their attention to that potential outcome? With that, a last audience prompt for those listening in would be, what's along with the question I had for Cam, like what's your hope for the future of beauty tech, whether that's more realism, more creativity, or something else entirely? Um, you know, Cam, you always bring your optimistic voice to these conversations, and so I would suggest people start their comment with "my hope," and in
Mm.
one sentence describe a let's say just a small change you'd like to see, or one thing that you feel really critical to happen in order to help us highlight what's important for you today. So our time has come. That's it for today's
Woo!
episode with Design with Renn. Once again, huge thanks to Kem for joining me again and helping us explore what is complex but fascinating space where AI is meeting identity. If today's conversation sparked something for you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to go deeper, check out our related episodes, ones that I mentioned. I've got a nice list here, actually. Designing with Ethics in the Age of AI, the ethical responsibilities of designers in the age of AI, designing with empathy in the age of AI, and the 4 mindsets that every designer needs. So until next time, help us keep designing with care. And we look forward to see and have you join in, Chris, once again. See you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching Design with Renn, where we explore what it means to create with care, context, and intention. If this sparks something for you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's designing for change. Want more? New episodes drop regularly, and you'll find resources, tools, and behind-the-scenes thinking right here on the channel. Keep designing with purpose, and I'll see you in the next one.